Hi there. My name is Ajay Kumar. Welcome to BI Consulting Pro. And today with me here is Jackson. Jackson is a solution architect who's working with Databricks in Netherlands. And I'm not going to say much about him, but today's session is on MLOps. What is it? Why do we need it? All the basics you are going to get to know in this session. And more about it, Jackson is going to tell about this one. But if you are over here for the very first time, please don't forget to subscribe this channel so that you can stay tuned with our latest content and the live streams as well. So Jackson, why don't you tell yourself?
Thanks, Ajay. Can we share the screen?
Of course, you can.
Yeah, I'm gonna introduce with the slides.
Yes.
Cool. Thanks, Ajay, for setting up the context and inviting me today. I think MLOps is quite a buzz nowadays in the industry. Everyone is talking about it. Few years ago, I had no idea what MLOps is. Learned it as I did it. And today I'm gonna share my experience and my learning. So maybe there might be things that I don't cover everything, but it should give you a quite good idea about what MLOps is. Yeah, let's get started. So I'm gonna demystify this word, MLOps, and try to explain it in a very simple manner. But before we get started, I also want to show what I'm going to talk about today. I
Yeah.
hope you can see my screen. Yes. Okay. So
Indeed,
I will
it's
start with
visible.
who am I,
Yeah.
so you get to know me a bit. And what is MLOps? Why MLOps? Who in MLOps and how? So these are some WH questions I came up with around MLOps in general. So let's just begin. Who am I? As Ajay already said, I'm a solution architect at Databricks, and you can follow me on LinkedIn, look at my website, and we also have our new MLOps Force YouTube channel, so you can subscribe and stay tuned for more MLOps content. This is my first MLOps session on YouTube.
Yeah.
Thanks to Ajay. A bit of background about me. I started my career 8 years ago, I think, in 2016 at TCS, where I was a big data consultant, working with different customers, setting up Hadoop and Spark on-prem solutions. And then, yeah, there was a big journey around it. I moved to Netherlands 5 years ago, so I'm currently living in Netherlands. I moved here to work at Rabobank via TCS. I was a consultant over there as a data engineer. And after that, 3 years ago, I moved to Friesen Campina. That is where we met, Ajay. And there I was, again, a data engineer, solution architect, capability lead. I think we had a lot of
Yeah.
roles. So that was
Indeed.
really fun. And that
Yeah.
was the place at Friesen Campina where we actually started talking about MLOps, building MLOps. So there's a lot of learning also from there, but also my perspective on things that I see in the field. And yeah, since 2 months, I'm at Databricks, quite happy here, and still a lot of things to learn. And so I'm gonna keep sharing as I learn in my journey. And as I said, I'm from India. Okay, a lot about me. Let's get started to learn more about MLOps.
Indeed.
What is MLOps? Before going into the why MLOps, let's just start with, okay, what exactly is this word? Um, what I say to a lot of people is it's just an extension of DevOps. If you're already in software, then you hear a lot about DevOps. It was still quite new, 5 or 8 years ago for me personally, and then came MLOps. So for people who are not into tech, usually what it is that you have software that you develop. Usually it's code on your laptop or somewhere. But to productionize it, you need some kind of automation. And that's where DevOps came. So your mobile applications or websites, how do you deploy it and keep it idempotent so that new versions don't break your previous versions and end users are still continue to work with it. Then came, okay, how do we do data science? Because data science was mostly notebooks, models, which was not really software in a way, but it had a bit more components to it. So there was code, yes, there was data, yes, but the extra thing was about the model. And it's so that's why I say it's an extension of it. Three main things are the model, code, and data. We need to operationalize these three things, have a lot of control over the changes over it, which I'm gonna speak about in a few slides later. But keep this in mind. This will help you to grasp it. Why MLOps? Or maybe let's see one. Wait for a bit more. What are the components in MLOps? Oh, I think this is why. I think I made a mistake on the slide. Yeah. I came up with this name, 3CPO, because I'm a fan of Star Wars. So see its challenges. I'm going to talk about what are the challenges that we try to solve in MLOps, or what are the challenges in data science, let's say. The people needed for doing MLOps in an organization, the process. Process is very important, as so is the people. So when I talk about MLOps, it's usually people and process that I focus more on. Technology is just a means, as we say. You can use any technology out there. There's a lot of technology, but people and process are the most important, because every organization is different, every team is different, and every person will have their own perspective of how to do things. Then comes the platform. So platform is as equally as important. So if you don't have a good platform, then yeah, people and process will be frustrated to say, hey, and this is not working and not working fast. And lastly, the most important is organization. If the organization doesn't adopt, doesn't support data science, or they don't use data science output, it becomes difficult to really promote and have people doing more data science, let's say. But it's also about, so I was leading MLOps. Most of my time went into really educating people why MLOps, and how to use the framework, but also the output that we are creating as data scientists. So this is an overview of what are the things important in MLOps from my perspective. Oh, now comes the why. As I said about the challenges, there's a lot of things that a data science scientist has a day-to-day challenge, but these are some common ones that I saw in the past 2 years. First one was very important, the code management. I heard there was a lot of data scientists having their own copies of code and their own languages that they use. Some use Python, some use R. I even heard some people using MATLAB, for example. And you have a lot of copies. You have copy one, copy two, final copy. And this becomes quite challenging when you want to operationalize your data science model. And when someone asks you, hey, can you create this again in a different environment? You're a bit lost, or it's difficult to get it back. Version control. So this is, well, you can also say that machine learning engineering is just software engineering, but with data science. So version control becomes also important. As I said, the three important things in MLOps: model, code, and data. You need to version them and track them. What do I mean by that is which model was created by which code and which data was used. That's very important, especially from a compliancy point of view. Let's say you're working in a regulated industry, or any industry, let's say, and someone asks you, hey, why did you flag me as a risk, or why did you flag me as not eligible, or something. So you need to always have an answer back to them. And when you have this whole lineage about it, then it becomes easier. Especially in the age of now Gen AI is coming up. There's a lot of enthusiasm, but there's also a lot of concern, like, hey, what can AI do? How is my data used? Then it becomes quite important that us as creators can answer these questions to the users, but also governance. Well, talking about it, governance, data governance is also important. Why is this important? Because as data scientists, we always want to work with production data. When I use dev data or dummy data, it's quite difficult to create models which will continue to work in an operationalized production environment. So I hear a lot of data scientists saying, hey, I want a production data access. How can I get it? You're really doing development on production data, which traditionally a lot of people will say, hey, this is not allowed. This is not how we do. That's really a mindset shift that we actually have to do. And it is okay to do it in a controlled environment. Operationalization. I think there are some numbers I cannot find, but it's quite out there. If you just Google how many models or data science models don't go into production, the number might be somewhere around 70 to 80%. That many models never go into production. It might be higher, it might be lower, but in general, a lot of models never see the light of the day. So with MLOps, the goal is to reduce this number to have most of the models into production and running and being used by the users. Scalability. I think nowadays scale is of the essence. I could do only certain things on my laptop, but when I had to serve to a lot of customers, just imagine an example of online shopping. You have a sale going on, let's say next week. You have a lot more users than you can normally handle. So how do you scale it up? Scaling is quite important from that perspective. So it's not about scaling your code, but it is really about scaling your infrastructure. And as MLOps engineer or ML engineer, infrastructure also comes within our perspective. And the most important is the compliance and monitoring, as I keep repeating multiple times, because it's the most important thing. Compliance, if you don't have a proper compliance system in place, there could be a lot of liability things that could go wrong.
Indeed. And Jackson, as you mentioned, that only few models can see the light in production. So according to a survey and answered by some of the guys on Quora, only 0 to 20% model go to the production whenever data scientists develop those models. So we can see that up to 80% of the models, they never ever see anything in the production, that we are productionalize them or we are operationalize them. So it's a very significant point to remember. And this is again going to tell us that why we really need MLOps on the top of DevOps. Like Jackson just mentioned, what are the challenges and how we can integrate it, how we can do the governance, version control, code management, operationalize scalability, as well as compliance. So guys, if you have question, again, put it in the comment section. Jackson is going to take us through everything and you would get all the answers. So we are going to keep the Q&A session at last so that we can go at once. Yes, Jackson, please go ahead.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I do see one question which might be answered in one of my coming slides.
Yeah.
So let's just continue. Well, it was just the next slide. Who are needed? The people. And these are the most important. When I talk about the roles in this slide, it doesn't mean that you need specific people to do this. One person can also do most of the roles, let's say, but it's really to separate the roles and responsibilities. Who are needed in the ML life cycle? It's not just engineers, but it's also the business side. And the stakeholders are the most important. When I start a project, I always see, is someone gonna use this model or not? And how are they gonna use it? If the business is saying, okay, we want this model which burns $10,000 a month, but the value coming out is, not known, or no one is going to look at the model, maybe that's not really the best use case to pursue. But when you say, hey, this is really high value business process, which is going to optimize, for example, sales, it's going to improve $100 million over a couple of years. I think that's a really good use case to work on. Then you start also building up the team if you don't have one. But what important essence here is that you have a business buy-in and you have someone who is gonna make use of it. Also, if you think about project methodologies in MLOps, mainly we use agile methodology. So every 2 weeks, every sprint, you have a model type or few model types being deployed and being tested out. Yeah, so there's always this regular iteration. It's not like a waterfall project that you do it for 6 months, 1 year, and then forget about it, but it's really iterative process together with the business stakeholders. So that's in principle the engineers, business, your project management, or let's say product owners, and then on the engineer side, there's a couple of roles that I see are the data scientists working together with a machine learning engineer, who are actually working with both data scientists and data engineer. Why I also include data engineer in a data science scope is because having good data is the most important for data science. I believe as data scientists, you should not be creating ETL pipelines or getting data from the source. In some organizations, that is needed. Yeah. But when you become a bit more mature organization, this changes. So there's a bit of how do you say, collaborative work between the teams. Or look at the data mesh ideology or other data methodologies that is being going on right now. So you have the data products, that is the source data products, and then you have the consumer aligned data products. And data science is more consumer focus, or a bit more closer to consumer. And well, let's just talk about it. How you see on the top right is, actually, let me do it like this. Okay, this is much better. So you have data engineers, which are responsible for getting data from the source systems for you and storing it in a data storage. And data scientists is usually doing, while data exploration or EDA, and they give the requirements that this is how the data should look like, and they create the models. For machine learning engineer, actually, I will say it goes a bit overall, and that they are caring about, okay, how is the data coming in, or is it good? Is a data model, or the data model is also as what data scientist needs. How is the model created by the data scientist? Is it good enough or not? So they can always do back and forth with the data scientist, like, hey, you used maybe XGBoost, but maybe there is a linear regression is good enough. And there could be scenarios where a simple model is a better model, and not always a complex model needs to be created. And the core responsibilities are the deployment and the monitoring of the jobs. So we don't deploy and forget, but we keep monitoring if the model is good or not. What do I mean by that is a good example, like if I'm building a recommendation system, and if it is recommending, let's say I'm shopping for electronics, but it's recommending me for, I don't know, groceries, that's a bit off for me. So then you say, hey, we need to retrain the model that it recommends electronics when people are buying electronics or something similar. and cross-sell or upsell the products. So that will be a good example for it. And how do you monitor this? I think we can discuss this in one of the future sessions more in depth. But
Yeah.
in principle, there are some metrics that we monitor out of the box.
Yeah, and Jackson, one question over here. So
Mhm.
let's suppose I have a model that is pre-trained already on flowers. Like it can detect the category of the flower, what kind of flower is it, etc. And now I want to detect some new categories of flowers, which was not previously being added or trained the model in that way, because it's not going to give me the answer for those that may be probably unknown. And I'm going to retrain and extend my model in this case because I have to add more images or labels, etc. And then I have to retrain it, right? So that's what we call retrain and extending of the model that we have. So in that case also, is it applicable to use the MLOps, or we can just directly deploy it? So how it's going to work in this case?
That's actually quite a good question. So this is a nice scenario of fine-tuning existing model. This is also quite similar to what nowadays we are doing with Gen AI. So there is an existing big model. Creating it from scratch is expensive. So
Yeah.
we just fine-tune it, add our own data. In all the scenarios, I will say that MLOps is still important. Some of the steps, I think you can skip them. So what I mean is that you don't need maybe the step of training it from scratch, but maybe you want to replace it with a step that says, oh, this is fine tuning, and use an existing data set. And then you still deploy the new model because you're always creating new artifacts whenever you're doing fine tuning or retraining the model. You still need to version everything and have a controlled deployment. So I will still say that MLOps is at each step of this process.
Great. Great. Thank you so much, Jackson, for answering this.
Yeah, no problem. I will also show in a bit about the architecture and use this problem statement as well, how I will solve it, and how you can skip some steps for it. Yeah, cool. This was it. And next is about how. Um, so we spoke about the challenges, the people. Now let's say, how do um, we execute this? I gave a bit of idea, really overview. As a data scientist, ML engineer, and data engineer. So data engineer, I said this really on the beginning part, that is the data prep. Here I'm taking an example of the medallion architecture. I'm not gonna, well, in a nutshell, what it is that you have your raw data, you clean the data, and then you create some advanced insights of that data. So there are three layers in medallion architecture. You can say raw, curated, and your gold layer where you have the business process or business insights. Yeah. Data scientist is creating feature stores using XGPUs, Keras, TensorFlow, all kind of different methodologies. They can use Python, R, MATLAB, anything. We want to track all the steps in a data science process. And there is a nice open source tool for it that's called MLflow, which helps you track all the artifacts, show the lineage. Also, there's a lot of out-of-the-box capabilities that you can use. And then when you are satisfied with the model that you have created as a data scientist, what you can do is you can actually deploy it as version 1, let's say, yeah, when it is a new model. What ML engineer will do is using CI/CD pipeline. What is CI/CD pipeline? It's a continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline, which consists of testing your code if there is any bugs on it or any formatting issues. Do some integration tests. So when you deploy this code, nothing else breaks. It's quite important to do that. Let's say you're deploying a model and your whole website comes down. That is not good. So we do this in a staging environment before it goes to production. But for model, it is important that we track everything, start from the development point of view, because it's always good to go back to what models you created during the development cycle. At this step, it's also important that you do a check with your business stakeholder, like, hey, this model is performing maybe 70% accurately. Is this good enough? If they say yes, then you promote it. So you might see a lot of logos here, but just try to follow my voiceover on it. So when the business says, hey, this is a good model, you can tag it as a champion model or whatever name you want to call it. If not, then you can always go back and then create a different type of model. And this is what I was talking about, the iterative process in the people side. Once the model is deployed, then you start doing your dashboarding. So you can have your Power BI dashboard or any other dashboard, let's say, that you have in your business process. And you can add this data science insights on top of it. And you can schedule it. So ML engineer is also responsible for that. As MLOps team, we used to create automated retraining as well. So based on some parameters, if the model is not performing so good, there is automation that re-triggers it. So it is a lot of manual steps we try to take away. So the time to market is reduced. So it doesn't take 3 months to create a new model, but maybe it just takes a couple of hours or in an automated way to create new models. And the data scientist comes in to check together with the business stakeholder here, is this new models good or not? This was a process. Any questions or thoughts, Ajay?
Yes. So over here, I have one silly question that may be silly, or let me ask you the question. So when we create the models, so what kind of data do we usually use? We know that we generally use after the raw layer when we put the data after curated layer somewhere for the exploration purpose. That time we use the data for creating our models or data science of work. So there, do we use the semi-structured, structured, or unstructured data, or is there any preference in terms of training the models?
Very good question. It actually depends on what the use case is. So it works with all the three types of data. So structure, that is a tabular data. And traditionally, a lot of regression models or forecasting can work with tabular data. But when you slowly go into deep learning, AI, Gen AI side of things, a lot more unstructured or maybe even a bit more semi-structured data comes in. Well, semi-structured is still, you can still use it for traditional ones, but you start looking at images, videos. So there are different models that works good in different scenarios and what use case you're trying to do. So if you're trying to classify something, a flower, then that comes,
Indeed. And thanks for answering this one. So now we are going to take these two questions as well that we have. And also my question is related to that. So it's just going to enhance the question that Kali, or I'm sorry if I cannot pronounce your name correctly. Kali asked that how can a DevOps engineer move into MLOps role? And actually the question is, how can somebody becomes an MLOps engineer? Because we have a DevOps engineer role for a long time in the industry. So this MLOps is relatively new as compared to the DevOps engineer role. How somebody can make a career into this one, or in another sense, do we have this kind of dedicated role in the organizations that somebody can get expertise into this only, rather being a data scientist, ML engineer, or data engineer?
That's a good question. So when I was hiring for machine learning engineers in our team before, I was actually looking for DevOps engineers. Why? because most of the tasks in as ML team is about DevOps pipeline. It's about CI/CD automation testing. The parts about, hey, how do we use ML flow? How do we create monitoring pipelines? Or how do we work with models? I think that's something that is you can really learn on the job. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how can a DevOps engineer move into MLOps role is just take a step and with working with data scientists. I think that's the first good step. Um, Ask them like, hey, you have a model. What does it mean to deploy it? I think that's a good question to start with because you will understand what are the added components that goes in a data science project. The rest of the things are quite similar. You still have Python code that you need to package and deploy. I think that's the same in DevOps as well.
Yeah.
You might have to add a bit more steps like, hey, deploy a model. Because a model could be a piece of code that creates that model, or it could be a model that is already trained, as you
Yeah.
said, maybe for
Yeah.
fine tuning.
Indeed.
And
Indeed.
yeah, and to just summarize in a way, um, you don't need specific skills, or there are some resources out there that you can start learning. But really, if you know already DevOps, what it does and how it does, it's quite easy to get into it.
Indeed. So, is it right to say that any DevOps engineer who's aspiring data scientist or ML engineer who's learning about it, he can be easily transferred or can get into this role of MLOps engineer?
In my perspective, yes.
All right.
And I think a lot of people will get into this spiral of getting in too much of data science
Yeah.
learning, but that is
Yeah.
not needed. I
Yeah.
think basic knowledge of, hey, what is logistic regression, what is I don't know, forecasting models, or what is deep learning or Gen AI. If we
Yeah.
know it a little bit, then it is already good enough to start with.
Yeah. But one of the language is important. That is Python. You should know actually how does it work. I believe that's going
Uh,
to be helpful.
yeah, a lot of people uses Python,
Yeah.
but some companies could also say, hey, we use a lot of R or Scala or something
Yeah.
else. So
Indeed. Indeed.
keep your
Indeed.
mind open. If
Yeah.
you're eager to learn, I think anything is possible.
Yeah. Very well said. So one last question for now, at this point of time, which is by Ashish Das. Is MLOps hard to learn?
I want to say yes. Uh, why? Because there's not one place that you can go and say, hey, I'm doing this and I am now an MLOps engineer or MLOps person. And each scenario is so different. So you need to actually find your own way. So in that sense, yes, it is hard to learn because there's not much guideline. So what
Yeah.
I'm saying right now is also maybe specific to one scenario. If there is a different scenario, I will do it completely different. Uh, but in principle, a lot of high level concepts remain the same. I think the challenge will come in how you use it. Then that becomes well hard to learn. So it's I will say learn by doing it.
All right. Thank you so much, Jackson, for answering all the questions and some of the reference material to learn more about the MLOps. If somebody already knows DevOps, you can share with us later. So guys would be more than happy to go through those resource materials, and definitely that can help them out. Now, let's move further by given the time. So we already passed 35 minutes and it's a lot. So let's go forward. And then at
Cool.
last, we are going to take other questions if there would be any.
Yeah. Okay. Coming about the fourth part, the third P, I wanted to keep it three-piece: people, process, platform. Platform is quite important. And well, I'm working at Databricks. Previously, I used Databricks as a platform to create our MLOps at Fritz and Campina. So I'm going to use that as a reference architecture of using Databricks as a platform. But you could also do this with some other tools that you might be already using it. What is important is to understand how different components work together. So I try to put this in a quite simplified way of comparing with the traditional IT flow. So you have your dev, test, and production. In data science, you can say you have exploration workspace or a dev workspace. Then you have the staging one, and production remains same. It could all be in same platform, or it can be multiple different platforms. It really depends on how your organization is set up. One main thing I want to highlight is this small green boxes in all the three environments is the production data. So production data is important as input source in any step of this whole flow. On top, you have the Git tracking. It can be GitHub, it can be Azure DevOps, or it can be AWS code commit or different tools. But what is important is actually the version controlling of it. So how you use your feature branches, main branch, and release branch, that is what is shown over here. And then you have your code. So what I said about exploratory data analysis, this is the first step that a data scientists start with. And based on that, you get some data modeling requirements for data engineering team. What I will say and recommend is, as data scientists, don't create your own data model. Try to fit it into data engineering requirement, because when you start doing your own data modeling, you have to also maintain it, and then the whole governance around it comes up. I will rather focus more on the model creation and governance of the models per se. So in dev, mostly you have a lot of notebooks for training, for creating different features, let's say, for your model. And I think there are a couple of steps here. You have your train, you have your prepare, so preparing of the data for predicting. Then you have your predict pipeline or inference pipeline, let's say, and validation. So what does validation do or evaluation do is test your model against existing predictions. So there's a lot of work going on in development. This could also be just your laptop, yeah. It's important that you back it up on a Git repository. Why I say that is, let's say your laptop stops working. I think a lot of people have gone through it. I have gone through it myself. But when you have Git repository behind your code, it's always easy to get it back. Here comes the handover between data scientist and machine learning engineer, because as machine learning engineers, what you try to do is see if the notebook is, well, notebooks can be a lot of cells here and there. So you need to a bit organize it and create it in a more software engineering package. What we actually did was create whole class hierarchy thing. So it's really professional software which data scientists add their models into. So that is what your maturity level will look like. But from day one, I think what we started was to start deploying notebooks as step one. And then as you mature, there's a lot of steps. What you do in the next phase in the staging or test workspace is that you check if your model deployment still works in a fresh workspace or not. If your data doesn't have any problems, it shouldn't, because you use the same production data from production. So if you have this, then it is the ideal scenario. If you don't, then I think you also need to do some data checks. I know I was also in such scenario that For development, I only had development data. In staging, only staging data. In production, only production data. It was only after a lot of efforts that we had production data, a regularity or commonality across all the workspaces. But from day one, you might not have that. So integration testing becomes important. Why?
Jackson,
If you're
one question
yeah,
over here.
mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to stop you
Yeah,
in
no
between.
problem.
But as you mentioned, we are using production catalog, the green ones everywhere
Yeah.
in with all the environment. So this, I'm not an expert here, but what is the core reason of using this everywhere? Because dev is a development environment, but why we are using? Are we using to compare something over here or anything else?
For as input, why production data is important is because you always want the real data to work with. You cannot create a model with dummy data because your model will be always off or different. Let's assume I'm using some open data to create a model, and then I switch it to production data, which might be way different than what I'm using in dev. Your model might not even work to predict it
Yeah,
correctly.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so that
Indeed.
is very important.
Yeah, yeah. But in our day-to-day life, when we do all the other stuff in data and analytics, generally our data never matches with the production one. So that's, I can understand it's a big challenge. But especially in case of guys, when we train the models, it's become very imperative that we use almost the latest data or the real-time data that we have. Otherwise, like I was mentioning, if I'm training the Flask, if I don't have all the latest categories, it's not gonna give me the right results or right output over there. Thank you so much, Jackson, for
Yeah,
clarifying
actually,
this.
that's a good example. You can
Yeah,
get a lot of false positives or false negatives or true
yeah,
negatives, let's say, and you will be always in a cycle that your model is not good enough.
indeed.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
actually, it's a good thing that you mentioned because you also see gray boxes here
yeah,
and maroon boxes.
yeah,
So production data is only for reading. Yeah, I'm not writing anything back. So in my dev environment, I will write the outputs in dev environment or dev catalog, let's say, and staging for staging, because I don't want to change anything from a dev environment to production. So that is still important and it remains. Yeah. Okay. So I spoke about the testing. So this goes from a feature branch into the main branch. Well, this testing is also automated. So there is no one clicking it manually, but you can set up some branch policies or triggers that can help you to do this. And once the tests are passed, you can also create automation that releases this main branch. It could be quite advanced in that sense, but you can also have some manual step in here. But when you create the release branch, you have some policies in your CI/CD, and then only it will be deployed to production environment. Why I say that is if you are a platform administrator, please have branch policies. You don't want your dev or feature branch going into production because a lot of things goes untested and will break a lot of things. But yeah, this is just some detailed things to discuss maybe in future. In production workspace, what do you do is maybe a bit more. I spoke about as ML ops team or ML engineers, you create a software package, taking all the notebooks and components into together. And this is what you see here. So you have code modules for model training, validation, and prediction. But you also have steps like registering models. So when I spoke about in the process that, hey, if a model is good, those become champion models. I also spoke about retraining. If the model is not performing good, you have automated training all in the production environment over here. So you have this monitoring box over here, which says, hey, your model is going up or down. It will trigger a pipeline within this same environment, which will start the training. This is all configurable. So this is all based on different use cases, different scenarios. If this is a use case of automated retraining, then the training happens here. You will have a new model, and you can say this is a challenger model. What means is this model is going to challenge the existing champion, and based on some parameters or checks, you can say with the business stakeholders again, you say, hey, this is a new model and we think this is performing well. It's called A/B testing in data science.
Yeah.
So you have 80% data going maybe for the champion one, little bit to the new model, and they can make a comparison.
Indeed.
And based on this, you can promote it. And the core crux is still MLflow. If you see across all the workspaces, MLflow is used as a tracking server, but also to store all your artifacts, metrics, your compliancy things, your lineage. Everything is stored over there. And if you look from a Databricks perspective, we have something called as Unity Catalog, which is the governance tool, and it is used for governing your data and AI assets. And if you look at the lineage, it will show you which data engineering pipeline was used, what kind of transformations were done, and what kind of model pipeline was used, metrics, and it gives you an end-to-end lineage.
Yeah, and over here it is very important to mention it that our Databricks Unity catalog is now also available as an open source. So any organization who would like to take the advantage of that, they can use it. Because Databricks also realized that how we are progressing in the world of data and AI, and it is very important that we can govern the resources responsibly. So please do read more about it on Databricks website. You would get to know and try to learn more about the Databricks.
Yeah, actually, interesting you talk about it. Yes, we open source Unity Catalog a few weeks back, 2 weeks, but also a lot of other components like Delta Lake, Apache
Yeah.
Spark, and it's all open source. So you could also deploy most of the things on your on-prem system, for example, or on your laptop. Let's say, I think Kali and Ashish, you had the questions, how can I get started? Well, do I need a big cloud platform? Yeah, maybe just set it up on your laptop and create a Spark cluster and then start playing around. I think that's a good way of also learning it.
Yeah. Thank you, Jackson.
And yeah, um, did I miss out something? I talked about metric table. So what is metric table? I want to still mention it because I mentioned it before. So metrics could be parameters about your model. There's a lot of things, different models have different parameters, and you can track those. But you can also create your own table structure, which you can use it from a really custom way. You can also say about the performance. If your model is taking a long time, take example of ChatGPT. If it is not responding you in 1 second, or if it is taking 10 seconds, then maybe it's performing low. So that could also be one way of tracking it. So it's really customizable. Everything you see here is plug and play, let's say. And coming to Ajay, your question about how can I do fine tuning? That's a good one because a lot of steps here about model creation or model training and validation or development becomes, well, you can say, okay, I'm going to skip this. I'm going to say that I want to do model fine tuning, deploy it to production. And in production, you can say, maybe I don't want a few of these steps. So you can really configure your jobs from that perspective. Yeah, okay. This was about the platform. There was a fifth one about organization. I left it out. There is no slide, but during all these slides, I did mention about how organization might look like or different scenarios might be there. So I tried to cover that, but in future, if there are some specific questions around it, we could cover it. But for this introductory session, I thought I'll keep it out because every organization is quite different. I cannot create a generic view of it. So that was about it. And thanks for listening in. And if you have questions, put it in the comments. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn to learn more. That's my website, jacksonisaac.com, and our new YouTube channel. Ajay helped me to create.
Yeah. Well, guys, if you are really excited about your MLOps journey, or even you are working as a data engineer, data scientist, AI engineer, or ML engineer, then I'll strongly suggest you to please follow Jackson and his work. And you can also follow a lot of material that is available online. Try to learn something new over there, and do follow our channel too, because we are going to bring you all the best of best people around us who are the veterans or who have immense amount of experience in data and analytics and AI field. That's where we are going, from data insights to AI innovations. Do follow Jackson on his YouTube channel right now, and also do follow us if you are over here for the very first time. About the questions, Jackson, we don't have any new question for so far, but in this session, we learned what is MLOps, why do we need it, how you can start your journey as an MLOps engineer, and what are the different kinds of architecture can be for MLOps. Also, there are the different components that you need to pay attention closely. In the future, we are gonna invite Jackson a lot more so that we can have a small demos as well. You guys can learn more about it. And we are going to talk a lot about AI too. So if you are interested for all those topics, do subscribe us, click the bell icon so that you can stay updated with us. And even still you have any question, or at any point of time you are watching this video, please put your comment in the comment section, and Jackson and me will reply to you. Jackson, any final thought?
Well, I spoke a lot, but thanks, Ajay, for providing this platform,
Yeah,
I think, for everyone to learn more about it. And I think for me personally, this is also learning for me. Yeah, when I share, I also maybe learn something new from the questions, or just from presenting, I come up with some new ideas.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a great platform, and great to be here today.
indeed. And we have one final question. It's again from Kali. He is asking about Jackson. Is Jackson available in TopMate or some other platform? So, Jackson, you need to answer this.
Oh, I have no idea what TopMate is.
To be honest, I don't have any idea, but please do search. And as far as I know, Kali, he's not. But if you want to get in touch with him, you can contact him via his LinkedIn channel and also on his website. And finally, you can subscribe to his MLOps Force channel, which is the latest YouTube channel that he's created. And in the future, he's going to publish a lot more videos over there. With that said, guys, we really appreciate that you joined us, and please do join for our future videos. That's going to be really very helpful for you, and be a part of our family where we are going to learn data and AI together. We can help you guys. You can also help us by joining our channel so that you can get most of it. And we have specific member related videos and tutorial courses, also one-on-one consulting and training programs. So please do check out our channel for more information. But meanwhile, keep exploring the world of data and keep learning together. Thank you so much,
Da-
Jackson. Really
Data
appreciate
and
it.
AI, right?
Yes,
It's
data
the
and
world of
AI.
data and AI.
It's all
Yeah.
about data and AI, and we are going to get data insights to AI innovation together.
Yeah, I think it's maybe just to end, AI is nothing without data, so the data is
Indeed.
quite important. Yeah, that's a
Indeed.
step one.
Oh, anything we do with data analytics, data engineer, data scientist, anything, it's nothing possible without data. But we should also know that data to information is also a process, which we are going to talk about in our next session, guys. Please stay tuned, and we are going to bring you more and more guests over this channel and more content for you. Till then, please take care of yourself, keep enjoying, and keep exploring the world of data.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.